And my dad was a guy who, and this is what I'm going to talk about, he didn't care for things that were pretentious, and I'm going to do something very pretentious right now. I found this very brief essay that was originally published in the Polish Catholic Weekly. I don't know Polish that well, Tygodnik Pożłęczny, about 10 years ago, written by a Polish Catholic philosopher who died about 10 years ago. His name was William Kolakowski. I don't know if he was related to us. When I look at pictures of him, he kind of looked like Grandpa. I remember in college one of my professors asking me if I was related to Leszek Kolakowski, and I didn't know, and I still don't know. But he calls this the complete and brief metaphysics. There won't be another. The house, which, to put it loftily, the human spirit inhabits, is built on 4 cornerstones. These are reason, God, love, and death. What caps the house is time, a reality that is the commonest in the world and the most mysterious. From the moment of our birth, time seems to us to be the most ordinary and the most domesticated of experiences. Something was, and then stopped being. Something was one way, and now it is different. Something happened yesterday, or even a minute ago, and can never come back. Time is therefore the most ordinary aspect of our existence, but also the most terrifying. The 4 realities mentioned above are our ways of dealing with the terror of time. Reason's task is to enable us to discover eternal truths resistant to time. God, or the Absolute, is that being which knows neither the past nor the future, but contains everything in its eternal now. When we say what he's saying to say this doesn't know, obviously God knows everything, but meaning that God transcends time. And so there's no past or future for God. There's only the present. Love and the intensity with which it is experienced also does away with the past and the future. It is the present, concentrated and exclusive. I think it's consecrated also, though. And death is the end of that temporality in which we have been immersed through all our lives, and perhaps, as we surmise, also an entry into another temporality of which we know nothing or almost nothing. All these foundations of our thought are the tools with which we liberate ourselves from the terrifying reality of time. And their purpose seems to be that of truly taming time. You know, it's hard to say goodbye to men like my dad, but I know I don't have to. Because I know, like the good deacon said, he's always going to be there with us. Whether it's merely in our memories or there's something deeper there, which I believe there is. The fact that he's the man who taught me how to be a man. He was the American who taught me how to be an American. And like I said before, he was a man of truth. He had no patience for anything pretentious. He had no patience for anything that was, you'll excuse me, that was BS. He wanted only things that were real. And that's what he strove for in life. He knew that there was a certain core of reality that transcended all the different trappings of nationality or religion or race, that we're all human beings. I was reflecting on, there's a saint that we revere from Poland, the Rebbe of Kutsk, and on Monday I was thinking a lot about how much of his teachings, who was a man who had no patience for anything pretentious and always cared about truth. And how similarly it was the way my dad would think. And then it was interesting because I was thinking about this and I didn't realize that this past Monday, not the day Dad left this world, but a few days ago now was actually what we would say would be the feast day of the Rebbe of Kutsk. So I thought that was interesting, and I was reading different things that he wrote, and I saw how the Kutzker said something along the lines. He said, well, any God that a dirty old man could believe in, that's not the type of God I want to believe in. And that's the type of thing my dad would say. He said something about when he saw something to be what he thought to be hypocritical or something. He's like, like Groucho Marx would say, any club that would have me as a member, I don't want to be a member of. That he was trying to express that type of attitude in saying that, but he cared about things that were real and lasting and forever. I remember when I was a kid, and he told me, before I started to get religious, he really pushed me. He told me, he said, I don't care if you go to synagogue or church, but I want you to be somewhere once a week. I don't want you to just, what we would say, be hefker, means like ownerless. Don't just be whatever you want. You gotta have a basis in life. I never really knew him as a man who would sit and read the Bible, but he told me he wanted me to read the Bible regularly, and I started to do so, and it became part of my life. And he told me, when he saw that, I was going beyond that once a week that he told me about. He said, I went through that phase once, when he was, when he was in Catholic school. He remembers there was one year where he went to Mass every day, and I think he was a true son of the church. Again, in that way of authenticity, it's well known. I've read through the New Testament also, and Jesus always spoke out against hypocrites, and that was the type of thing my dad really embraced from the teachings of Jesus. And he was proud of all of us. He was proud of all of his kids and all of his grandkids. I remember he told me one time he loved to call radio shows and be on the call-in. And he told me once, he said he managed to get through on the Curtis and Kubi show, and he told Curtis Sliwa how proud he was of his son in yeshiva. So, and like I said, his hatred of false pretenses meant he was a heavenly person. He couldn't stand the nonsense of the world. He's home now because he was a man who in our tradition we call heaven the world of truth. And that's what he wanted. He wanted to be in that world of truth. He wanted to be closer to heaven, so he got away from the city. I remember he once said to me, he said that Long Island, did God just take a scraper and just make that whole thing flat? I need to see some hills and mountains. And then I remember learning geology class about, pretty much that's how Long Island was a glacier, just flattened the whole thing out. And so he came here upstate. Even when we lived in Long Island, he always want to come camping here. You always want to get out of the city, and I think he really wanted to go out west. And Sarah is living vicariously through that. And, he wanted to be a cowboy out west. And but he taught me how to be a good husband by how I saw how much he loved Mommy. And he told me about how much he loved her and how, what that means. Not that I could live up to that, but he at least taught me it, even if I don't live up to it always. I know he wanted to live a long life. He used to say, he's like, it'd be good to live to be about 92, but, he's going to live more than that. 64 years here is one thing, but like I said, his home is in heaven all the time. I mentioned the Rebbe of Kutsk. The Kutzker said to die is just to go from one room to another. That's all it is, and that's the way he died. He did what he loved. He was a hardworking man. He loved to work, and he went out to do his work, and that's how he went to heaven, doing his work. And I guess he didn't have to pay for anything by suffering. He just managed to go on to where he wanted to be. And I haven't really been crying much, and I cry about all kinds of things. I'll cry reading books and movies, and I haven't been crying for my dad. That's when I think about my kids losing their grandfather, that made me cry. But for me, he's still with me because all the things he taught me are still here. You know, I went right back to work the next day because that's what he would have wanted. That's what he would have wanted me to do. He was a hardworking man. That's all he wanted me to do. And I know he probably appreciates, you know, today at work we had some seminarians and they said a prayer for him. They were from the Orthodox Christian Church, and they sang beautifully. They sounded like a barbershop quartet, but there were 7 of them. So it was, and they sang a nice hymn and said a prayer for him. And I asked the deacon who I supervise at work that he said a prayer last week, Saturday at the Catholic service in the prison where I work, but the priest couldn't make it last week, so there'll be a mass this Saturday. And they'll be saying prayers for him there, and I know he always appreciated. You know, I remember he taught me how to respect different people, which is important in my line of work, working with different religions. You know, I remember saying something to him about what does it mean, idolatry and so forth, and I said something about another tradition. He said, no, they also believe in one God like us. He said that, you know, Don't just discount that. We're more the same than we are different. So I know like how we love things from the Old West and everything, and was interested in Native American culture. We have a Native American group in the prison, and they'll say some prayers for him too. And when the chief comes in on Monday, and I think for my dad, that's what he would have appreciated, stuff like that. You know, that because you know, if someone's in jail and they're still going to church, that means there's no false pretenses there. They're really looking for something. They really want to turn their life around. They're not just trying to fit in, you know. So, and I hope to try to live those lessons and keep my dad alive by doing that. And we all, whatever lessons that we have from my dad, William Joseph Kolakowski, his confirmation name was after his father, Joseph. You know, that was the type of person he was. William means a wolf, and he was like a wolf keeping his pack together. And Joseph means to increase and to add, and he should just, even if he's not here with us physically, we know spiritually he's just going to keep increasing and adding the message that he gave. And so therefore, we might have lost him physically, but we'll never lose him spiritually. Thank you.